I never thought this video would be possible in today's economy, because today I'm going to talk to you about 10 Grand Tourers that you can buy for under £5,000. I'm a huge fan of Grand Tours. Anything that can take me around Europe on a lovely Grand Tour, I'm all about. And if you are too, do hit the like button and subscribe as well if you're one of the 77% of people that aren't subscribed to the channel watching this right now. Let's get straight into it. Let's kick this video off with arguably one of the most beautiful Peugeot road exclusive cars to have ever existed. The Pininfarina designed Peugeot 406 Coupe, a lovely French cruiser that deserves a bit of respect considering how much nicer it is than most other cars from the brand at the time. It came with a few engine options including the 2.2 litre diesel inline 4-block which makes 136 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in a lowly time of 10.6 seconds, and it was a FAP engine, meaning it was known for particulate filter issues, though these problems are now pretty well known. What's amazing about the design on these is that it was actually a Fiat reject. The Fiat Coupe had a design competition between the legendary Chris Bangle and Pininfarina, and they chose Mr. Bangle's mock-up, so the Pininfarina design ended up on the 406 instead. I roguely think the 406 is actually the sleeker car, but I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. They'll run you around 3k at the bottom end and are pretty hard to come by, but for our 5k limit you'll get a 2002 model with 60k on the clock. It's no secret that I'm a massive Alfa Romeo fan, but the GT has never really been a car I've personally considered, despite being a lovely looking Bertone designed sports car which picked up where the GTV left off, modernising the whole Alfa sports car experience. Like the 406, these came with multiple engine options including a well-known 1.9 litre JTDM inline 4-block which makes 150 brake horsepower, taking the car to 60 in 9.3 seconds, though you can of course get faster models, and this engine is known for timing belt and water pump issues if not replaced on schedule. It's actually related to the Alfa Romeo 156 and 147, sitting on the same platform, though its design is more similar to the 159 and Brera, as the car did get released during the later facelifts on the 156. It's the kind of car you'd expect to be rear-wheel drive, but actually given I've driven some of its stablemates, it definitely works in front-wheel drive as long as it has the diff. These start around the 1.5k mark, which is crazy cheap considering, and 5k gets you a 2007 model with 90k on it. Volvo are more known for their safety and sensibility than their flamboyant Grand Tourers, but the C70 is about as close as you can get, which was designed by Volvo but actually built at the Swedish arm of Pininfarina, which is pretty cool. I think it's actually a great looking car, and more importantly it gets an excellent sounding engine in T5 spec, which you can enjoy with the hardtop convertible roof down on this Volvo, unlike many of its stablemates. That engine is a 2.5 litre turbocharged inline 5 block, making 220 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 7.4 seconds, pretty slow in part thanks to that very heavy convertible roof. This car actually kicked off Volvo's joint venture factory alongside the Swedish installment of Pininfarina and was the second generation C70, with the first coming as either a coupe or convertible as opposed to a nice hardtop convertible. They're listed anywhere from around £2,000, and £5,000 gets you a 2008 model with 60,000 miles on it. Sadly the roof has been known to have some issues, and the transmission is the other area that causes issues with these. We're on to the biggest engine on the list now, shoved into the beautiful Mercedes CL500, which I think has the potential to reach classic status in the very near future, as every year they get better and better looking. Of course, with classics only the best be worth the real money, but long-term prices could become quite unreasonable with those ones, so I reckon the cheaper end will also become a bit more desirable too. The CL500 comes with a 5 litre V8 block which makes 306 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 7.1 seconds, which is almost American muscle car levels when it comes to the capacity to power ratio. The most pretty part of these has to be that roofline, with the pillarless design that took inspiration from the classic W111 coupe. There are more aggressive models of this CL, but the 500 has to be the best value for money, given you still get a massive V8, some decent performance figures and the lovely looks. It's just not a V12 like the CL65. These start at around £2,500, and double that gets you a 2004 model with 75,000 miles on the clock. Do watch out for air suspension though, which is an expensive repair. Next up we're jumping from 1998 to 2010 with the Audi A7, the only car with more than 2 doors on this list, but arguably one of the most fit for purpose if your Grand Tour includes more than just one other guest. It's a very different looking car with its liftback design, and in reality it's almost the same car as an A6 Estate, which would probably be better for a Grand Tour if anything, with all the boot space, though slightly less dynamic than this more aerodynamic A7 design. You only get the 3 litre turbo diesel V6 for our money, which makes 201 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 7 seconds, but it's another well-known VW Group block with documented issues like solenoid issues, throttle body actuator issues, and in the worst cases, crank and conrod issues. Strangely, this was designed by the man known for only one other Audi really, the A1, which I also think is a great looking car, cars, so strange that as the head of design he isn't known for more. These start at around our 5k limit, however, and for that kind of money you'll be getting a 2012 model with 90,000 miles on the clock. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, but I have a difficult question for you. I actually don't know the answer myself. What is the greatest Grand Tourer ever? I think the 300 SL stakes a very good claim to it, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. And make sure you've hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. Another VW Group car now, and one of the rarer cars on this list, the VW EOS. Now, I know what you're thinking, this is basically just a Golf with a convertible roof. How can this be a Grand Tourer? Well, you're not entirely wrong, but one, we're talking about sub 5k here, we have to make do with what's available, and two, more importantly, with the right engine, this car is perfect for a lovely cruise. It is, however, the rarest engine option you'll find within the EOS that I'm talking about, the 3.2 litre VR6 block, which makes 256 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 6.7 seconds. Basically the same block you get in the Golf R32, but front wheel drive rather than all wheel drive. What's even better for a Grand Tour is that the special retractable hardtop also has a glass sunroof, which is the only one of its kind on release, and though it's also a key source of problems on these, it would be great fun for cruising along a Grand Tour in any weather, enjoying the scenery. They'll run you around 1k at the bottom end in non-VR6 spec, but I did find a VR6 for under 5k from 2008. Next up we have the Lexus SC 430, though you don't actually have to clarify that it's a 430, as unlike other Lexus models, it only came with the 430 powertrain. This car is the predecessor to some of Lexus's most stunning cars ever, like the LCs that we see on the roads today, and though I've never been a huge fan of the SC when it comes to looks, I do think with age and the right spec they can just look quirky enough to be an interesting, cheap Grand Tourer. These come with a 4.3 litre V8 block which makes 282 brake horsepower, taking them to 60 in 6 seconds, and even better, that engine is pretty solid, with the main issues being the O2 sensor, the water pump that requires replacing at certain intervals, alongside the cam belt as well, as you might expect. I'm super into the history of car designers right now, which is why I find it so interesting that this was designed by a Greek designer who was also known for the first gen Toyota Yaris. These start at around £3,000 and £5,000 get you a 2003 example that's done around 90,000 miles. The hardest car to get into on this list is also the oldest, the Mitsubishi 3000 GT, or GTO in the Japanese domestic market, and for our 5k limit you'll probably only actually be able to find a JDM example from around 1996 as opposed to an official import to the UK. That's no huge loss though, it's a lovely piece of JDM history and a car that in its most potent spec would beat the likes of the twin-turbo Nissan 300ZX and the Mazda RX-7 over a quarter mile, despite being cheaper than both. This example, however, comes a 3 litre V6 block that makes 282 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 5.5 seconds, still pretty decent for its age. Carrying on the theme of taking down giants, in MR spec it was literally quicker than the R32 Skyline GTR over a standing mile, which is pretty insane. It beat the car that was built to beat supercars, and today is significantly cheaper. Automatic transmissions are known to have issues though, and lift to tick is known as well, which is slightly easier to detect since it should show up on startup. The BMW 645 Ci might be the best value for money Grand Tourer you can get into on this list. It's got the right powertrain, enough storage space if you sack off those rear seats and use them for suitcases, and the option of going for a convertible too if you're that way inclined. It wasn't the most aggressive example of the 6 Series, of course, with the M6 and some other V8 blocks above it, but it's still got a 4.4 litre V8 that makes 328 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 5.4 seconds, just under a second slower to 60 than the M6, though of course without that beloved V10 soundtrack. I mentioned Chris Bangle earlier, this was his design, which you can tell by the rear end, and though it's quite a large car, it has a lot of carbon reinforced plastic to cut the weight down. It's actually sitting at around 1,490 kilograms, which is not bad at all compared to cars like, oh, I don't know, the new M5. These start at around £3,000 and 5k is enough for a 2005 model with 90,000 miles on the clock. Mechanically, they've been pretty good, but electrical issues are known, sadly. Taking the top spot on this list is the Jaguar XKR, a car that I think is just getting better and better looking with age, like the CL500 mentioned before, and I think it'll be worth a bit more in future if we still have combustion engined cars, and if they've been looked after, of course. You'll only get an older XKR within our price range, meaning the older engine block, a 4 litre supercharged V8 that makes 370 brake horsepower, the most on this list, taking it to 60 in 5.2 seconds. Not bad for one of the oldest cars on the list too, though earliest engines were known for bore wear and timing chain issues. The XKR was basically a supercharged supercharged example of the standard XK8 with some additional modifications visually, like the little spoiler on the rear, some more aggressive louvers on the bonnet, and a slightly different front grille, with the focus being on getting more airflow into that engine bay to keep it all cool in there. They're listed anywhere from around £3,000, and 5k is enough to get a 2001 model with 90,000 miles on the clock. And so there you have it, 10 cheap Grand Tours for under 5k. I hope you enjoyed it. Do hit like and subscribe if you did. Huge thanks to the patrons for their support, and to you guys as well for watching. Now check out this video on some of the best looking cars within the same price range.